There is a quiet tragedy that follows people through their lives.
It doesn't announce itself. It doesn't arrive suddenly. It forms slowly, like sediment settling at the bottom of a river. It is the moment someone learns to ignore the soft signals of their own body, to silence their hunger, to swallow their disappointment, to pretend they aren't overwhelmed, even when every cell inside them begs for rest. And the world never sees this moment happen. Only the person living inside the body feels the shift, that gentle closing of a door that should have stayed open. They learn, without being told, that their needs are optional, secondary, inconvenient, something to be managed, hidden, or minimized, something to live around, not to live with. This is where the tragedy begins. It often starts in childhood, long before memory can record the details. A child looks for comfort and finds impatience instead. They seek reassurance and meet a sigh. They ask for help and hear that others have it worse. And they adapt. Children always adapt, even when it costs them parts of themselves. So they start shrinking their needs until they fit into the spaces that others allow. They smile through discomfort. They stay quiet when something hurts.
They pretend their feelings are lighter than they actually are.
And somewhere within that pretending, the self becomes divided. A public version that seems fine and a private version that aches quietly in the dark. People grow older, but the pattern remains. It shows up in relationships where they give more than they receive.
In friendships where they become the reliable one, but never the vulnerable one.
In workplaces where they push past exhaustion because resting feels like a form of guilt. They move through life like a ghost inside their own story. Present, functioning, even admired, yet emotionally underfed. The origins are rarely dramatic. They are small, subtle moments repeated over time. A parent who struggles with their own emotions. A household that praises self-sufficiency but ignores emotional presence. A culture that celebrates endurance but avoids intimacy. Children internalize rules long before they understand them. They learn that love is earned by being easy. That safety is found in quietness. That belonging comes from not causing trouble. So they begin to perform. They become agreeable, adaptive, predictable. They hide their pain because pain makes others uncomfortable. They hide their anger because anger invites punishment. They hide their sadness because sadness feels like a burden. Eventually, they hide their needs because needs feel like weaknesses. And with enough repetition, the hiding becomes automatic. It becomes part of the personality. It becomes the default setting of their emotional life. Psychology has many words for this pattern. Emotional suppression, self-abandonment, fawning, attachment adaptations. But the body simply calls it survival. The nervous system learns to prioritize harmony over honesty. It reduces signals that might cause conflict. It dampens emotional impulses that could lead to rejection. Over years, the brain rewires itself to anticipate the reactions of others before acknowledging its own. This is how people learn to read a room better than they read themselves. How they become experts at sensing what others need, while remaining strangers to their own internal world. Research shows that ignored emotions don't disappear. They migrate. They settle into the muscles as tension, into the stomach as heaviness, into sleep as restlessness, into behaviors as overthinking, people-pleasing, or chronic resignation. The body remembers what the mind has learned to numb. And even when someone forgets their needs, their body never does. But something inside them resists the numbness. A quiet protest rises whenever they say yes while meaning no. Whenever they comfort someone else while secretly needing comfort themselves. Whenever they swallow an honest feeling because they fear how it might be received. This inner conflict is subtle.
It arrives as fatigue that doesn't go away.
Or irritation that feels disproportionate, or a sense of emptiness that appears without warning. Sometimes it surfaces as longing for rest, for softness, for a life where they don't have to hide the parts of themselves that feel too human. And yet the moment they try to express a need, an old familiar fear appears. Fear of being misunderstood, fear of being too much, fear of disrupting the peace they have worked so hard to maintain. So they retreat again. They choose silence because silence feels safer than honesty. They choose endurance because endurance feels safer than vulnerability. But each time they do, a small part of them drifts further from the place where their real self waits. There comes a quiet moment when the numbness becomes impossible to ignore. It may arrive after a relationship ends or during a conversation where they hear their own voice and no longer recognize it, or in the stillness of an evening where the exhaustion of pretending finally catches up to them. It is the moment they realize how heavy the mask has become. They notice the friendships where they are always the listener, the relationships where they are always the giver, the routines that leave no space for breath because their life has been built around everyone else's needs but their own. And the realization is not dramatic. It is gentle, almost tender, like noticing that a wound has been open for years, like realizing the loneliness they feel is not freedom but self-neglect. The turning point is not a decision to change, but an awareness that something inside them deserves to exist with full honesty. Healing does not begin with grand gestures. It begins with noticing the clench in the stomach when they agree to something they don't want, noticing the tug of disappointment when their needs go unmet, noticing the tiredness that comes from carrying emotions alone. Over time, they learn to pause before dismissing themselves, to acknowledge the feeling that rises, even if they cannot express it yet, to understand that emotions are signals, not inconveniences. Slowly, the body begins to trust them again. The numbness softens. The internal world becomes easier to hear. They discover that needs are not demands. They are indicators of humanity. Proof that they are living, breathing beings with limits, longings, and inner landscapes worth tending to. They learn that intimacy is not created by minimizing themselves, but by allowing themselves to be known. And healing becomes less about undoing the past, and more about relearning how to inhabit the self they abandoned long ago. In the end, the tragedy of numbing one's own needs is not that it happens. It is that it happens quietly, without anyone realizing what is being lost. But there is a quiet hope in noticing the loss, because noticing is the first sign of awakening, the first sign that the body and the mind are ready to be reunited. Every person has a truth within them that has been waiting patiently, the truth of what they feel, what they long for, what they fear, what they deserve. And when they finally turn toward that truth, the numbness begins to loosen its grip. They begin to feel again, slowly, cautiously, as if returning to a home they forgot they were allowed to enter. There is no rush, no urgency, only a gentle unfolding, a remembering that their needs were never a burden, only a quiet language they were never taught to speak. And someday, when they look back, they may realize that the moment they began listening to themselves was the moment their life finally started to feel like their own.